Before anyone ever sees your victory, your heart has to survive the fire, because winners are not born loud. They are forged in silence, where doubt tries to suffocate ambition and fear whispers that quitting would be easier. A winner thinks differently when the world sleeps, works differently when excuses look attractive, and moves differently when pressure tries to break them. Winners don't wait for motivation, they command it. They don't negotiate with weakness, they dominate it. While others complain about the rules, winners master them. While others dream about comfort, winners fall in love with discipline, because they understand that pain is temporary, but regret is permanent. Every loss becomes a lesson, every failure becomes fuel, and every lonely night becomes proof that greatness requires sacrifice. Winners think in terms of ownership, not entitlement. They work with obsession, not convenience. And they win because they refuse to surrender when life hits hardest. The 4 keynotes of a winner's mindset are ruthless self-belief, disciplined daily action, emotional control under pressure, and relentless consistency. The 5th rule is the 66 principle: show up and give full effort at least 66% of the days when you don't feel like it, because that's where separation is created, dominance is built, and victory becomes inevitable. Discipline is the foundation of freedom, because without it, your life is controlled by moods, impulses, excuses, and circumstances. And a man or woman who cannot control themselves will always be controlled by the world. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they feel like, but that is the biggest lie ever sold, because feelings are unstable, temporary, and weak. When you wake up and let emotions decide your actions, you hand over your power. One bad mood ruins your productivity. One moment of comfort steals years of progress. And one excuse becomes a habit that destroys your potential. Discipline is the ability to act regardless of how you feel, to move forward even when motivation is dead, to do the hard thing when every part of you wants the easy way out. This is where real freedom begins. When you are disciplined, you are no longer a slave to laziness, fear, or pleasure. You don't need inspiration to work. You don't need validation to stay consistent. And you don't need approval to believe in yourself. You wake up and execute because that's who you are. Discipline gives you control over your body, your time, your mind, and your future. Without it, you will chase comfort, and comfort will slowly kill your ambition. Look around, and you'll see people trapped in cycles they hate, not because life is unfair, but because they never mastered themselves. They eat what feels good instead of what fuels them. They scroll instead of building. They complain instead of improving. And then they blame the world for results they never earned. Discipline removes excuses. It forces honesty. It shows you exactly where you stand. Every disciplined action compounds into confidence, because you begin to trust yourself. When you say you'll do something, you do it. That trust becomes self-respect, and self-respect becomes power. The disciplined mind does not panic under pressure, it calculates. It does not react emotionally, it responds strategically. While others collapse when things get hard, the disciplined individual gets sharper, calmer, more dangerous. Freedom is knowing you can survive discomfort. Freedom is knowing pain won't stop you. Freedom is being able to say no to short-term pleasure because you are committed to long-term dominance. Discipline builds strength in silence. No applause, no shortcuts, just repetition, sacrifice, and focus. And over time, that discipline creates options. Options create leverage. Leverage creates freedom. The people who laugh at discipline today are the same ones begging for relief tomorrow. Because undisciplined living always sends a bill, and it always comes with interest. Discipline pays up front so you don't suffer later. It makes you wake up early, train when tired, work when bored, and stay focused when distracted. But in return, it gives you control, confidence, and a life that isn't ruled by chaos. The truth is brutal, but simply, if you can't force yourself to do what needs to be done, you don't own your life. You are renting it from your emotions. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. It protects your goals from laziness, your future from weakness, and your legacy from regret. And once discipline becomes your identity, freedom is no longer something you chase. It's something you live every single day. Discipline is the foundation of freedom, because without it, your emotions will dictate your destiny. And emotions are unreliable masters that change with comfort, fear, and convenience. When discipline is missing, every feeling becomes a command and every impulse becomes a decision. And that is how people slowly lose control of their lives without even realizing it. You don't fail all at once. You drift. You drift when you skip what matters because you don't feel like it, when you delay progress because tomorrow feels safer than today, when you trade purpose for pleasure and call it balance. Discipline is what pulls you back from that drift. It is the inner law that forces you to act with intention instead of reaction. Without discipline, anger controls your words, laziness controls your habits, fear controls your risks, and comfort controls your future. You become predictable, weak, and easy to manipulate by circumstances. Discipline breaks that chain. It teaches you to pause before reacting, to choose effort over ease, and to move with clarity even when your emotions are screaming for relief. True freedom is not found in escaping responsibility. It is found in mastering it. When you are disciplined, you don't need perfect conditions to perform. You don't need constant motivation, praise, or reassurance. You rely on structure, standards, and self-command. That self-command creates stability, and stability creates power. A disciplined person can be tired and still execute, scared and still move forward, uncomfortable and still remain focused. That ability separates leaders from followers and winners from wishers. Emotions are useful signals, but terrible decision makers. If you obey them blindly, they will keep you small. Discipline puts emotions in their place. It allows you to feel pain without quitting, feel doubt without retreating, and feel pressure without breaking. This is how confidence is built, not through hype or words, but through repeated proof that you can be trusted by yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when it hurts, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. Over time, that compounds into unshakable self-respect. And self-respect is something no one can give you and no one can take away. The undisciplined life feels easy in the moment, but expensive in the long run. It costs you opportunities, relationships, health, and pride. Discipline feels hard now, but pays dividends forever. It sharpens your mind, strengthens your body, and hardens your spirit. It removes chaos and replaces it with direction. When discipline becomes part of your identity, your environment stops controlling you. Noise loses its power, temptation loses its grip, and excuses lose their voice. You stop asking how you feel and start asking what needs to be done. That shift alone can change an entire life. Freedom is waking up knowing your mood won't decide your output. Freedom is knowing you can push through discomfort without falling apart. Freedom is having the strength to say no to what weakens you. You can say yes to what builds you. Discipline is not about suffering for no reason. It's about choosing your struggle. Either you struggle to stay disciplined or you struggle with regret, but one leads to growth and the other leads to decay. When you master discipline, you master direction. When you master direction, you master outcomes. And when you master outcomes, you are no longer a slave to emotions, circumstances, or luck. You become the architect of your own life, moving with purpose, grounded in control, and free in the truest sense of the word. Discipline is the foundation of freedom because without it, your emotions will quietly put chains on your life, one decision at a time, until you wake up years later wondering how you lost control. Most people don't realize they are slaves because the cage feels comfortable. They follow what feels good, what feels easy, what feels safe, and they mistake that comfort for happiness. But emotions are impulsive and short-sighted. They want pleasure now and avoid pain at all costs, even if that pain is necessary for growth. When emotions lead, discipline disappears, and when discipline disappears, consistency dies. You start strong and quit early. You make promises and break them. You dream big and live small. Discipline is what saves you from that cycle. It is the ability to override emotion with purpose, to say no when everything inside you wants to say yes, and to move forward when fear tells you to stay still. Without discipline, stress controls your reactions, anger controls your words, and insecurity controls your choices. You become reactive instead of deliberate, always responding to life instead of commanding it. Discipline gives you the power to slow down your reactions and speed up your progress. It creates distance between feeling and action, and in that distance lies freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is being able to do what you should, even when you don't want to. A disciplined person is not emotionless. They are emotionally intelligent. They feel the same fear, doubt, and exhaustion as everyone else, but they refuse to let those feelings decide the outcome. They understand that emotions are weather, not direction. Some days it storms, some days it's calm, but the disciplined mind keeps moving toward the destination regardless. This is how strength is built. Not through comfort, but through repetition under resistance. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you reclaim authority over your life. You stop outsourcing your future to your moods. You begin to trust yourself because your actions align with your words. That trust becomes confidence, and confidence creates momentum. The undisciplined life feels free in the short term, but it slowly erodes your self-respect. You avoid discomfort today and pay with regret tomorrow. Discipline demands effort now, but rewards you with control later. It forces you to confront reality instead of escaping it. It exposes weakness so it can be strengthened. It replaces chaos with structure and excuses with standards. When discipline becomes part of your identity, you stop negotiating with yourself. You don't ask if you feel like working, training, learning, or improving. You do it because it's non-negotiable. That consistency compounds into mastery, and mastery is freedom. Freedom from financial stress, freedom from emotional instability, freedom from dependence on motivation, and freedom from the opinions of others. A disciplined person is difficult to break because they are internally governed. External pressure doesn't shake them easily. Criticism doesn't derail them. Failure doesn't define them. They adapt, adjust, and continue. This is why discipline is dangerous to mediocrity. It exposes laziness, excuses, and entitlement for what they are. It forces growth. And growth is uncomfortable, but it is also the gateway to independence. Without discipline, your emotions will keep you chasing distraction, validation, and instant gratification. With discipline, you build focus, patience, and long-term vision. You stop living moment to moment and start living with intention. You become proactive instead of reactive. You create your own rhythm instead of being dragged by circumstances. Discipline is not a restriction, it is a release. It releases you from the need to be constantly entertained, constantly reassured, constantly comfortable. It teaches you how to endure, how to persist, and how to win quietly. And once you master discipline, emotions lose their control over you. They no longer dictate your actions, they simply inform them. At that point, you are no longer a slave to how you feel. You are free because you are in command. Discipline is the foundation of freedom because without it, your emotions quietly take control of every decision. And once emotions are in charge, your life becomes unstable, reactive, and easy to derail. Emotions are powerful, but they are not wise. They change with sleep, hunger, stress, comfort, fear, and validation. If you allow them to lead, you will live inconsistently, starting strong and finishing weak, feeling motivated one day and defeated the next. That inconsistency is the invisible prison most people live in. They think they are free because no one is forcing them, but in reality, they are being pulled in every direction by how they feel in the moment. Discipline is what breaks that cycle. Discipline is choosing structure over chaos, standards over excuses, and long-term vision over short-term relief. Without discipline, your emotions will convince you to quit when things get hard, to delay when action is required, and to settle when greatness is possible. They will justify laziness, romanticize comfort, and disguise fear as logic. Discipline cuts through that noise. It doesn't argue with emotions, it overrides them. It says do it anyway. It says show up even when you're tired, stay focused even when you're bored, and stay committed even when results are slow. This is where freedom begins, because the moment you can act without needing to feel good first, you gain control over your life. A disciplined person does not depend on motivation, because motivation is unreliable. They depend on identity. They do what must be done because that's who they are. That self-command creates stability, and stability creates confidence. You stop doubting yourself because your actions are consistent. You stop fearing pressure because you've trained yourself to operate under it. Emotions lose their power when they realize you will not obey them blindly. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause. Instead of exploding in anger, you choose restraint. Instead of escaping discomfort, you lean into it. That ability to endure discomfort without collapsing is rare, and rarity is power. The undisciplined life feels easier in the moment, but it slowly drains your self-respect. You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you're avoiding what needs to be done. That quiet guilt builds over time and turns into frustration, bitterness, and regret. Discipline removes that guilt because you are aligned with your values. You may be tired, but you are proud. You may be under pressure, but you are calm. Discipline builds an internal order that external chaos cannot easily disturb. When life throws uncertainty, criticism, or setbacks at you, the disciplined mind doesn't panic. It adjusts and continues. This is why discipline creates freedom in every area of life. Financial freedom comes from disciplined spending, saving, and investing. Physical freedom comes from disciplined training, nutrition, and recovery. Mental freedom comes from disciplined thinking, emotional control, and focus. Without discipline, every area becomes fragile. You depend on luck, mood, or circumstances. With discipline, you build resilience. You become hard to break. You stop chasing quick wins and start building lasting strength. Discipline is not about perfection, it's about commitment. It's about returning to the path even after you slip. Emotions will always fluctuate, but discipline gives you a baseline you can rely on. It gives you direction when you feel lost in momentum, when you feel stuck. It teaches you to respect time, energy, and effort. Over time, disciplined actions compound into results, and results create options. Options are freedom. Freedom to choose where you go, who you become, and how you live. The people who reject discipline often call it restrictive, but they are already restricted by their impulses, addictions, fears, and habits. Discipline doesn't trap you, it unlocks you. It frees you from being controlled by cravings, distractions, and excuses. It allows you to delay gratification, which is one of the most powerful skills a human can develop. When you can delay pleasure and endure discomfort, you are no longer easy to manipulate by life. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop living emotionally and start living strategically. Discipline turns chaos into order and potential into performance. And once discipline becomes part of who you are, emotions no longer rule you. They become information, not commands. At that point, you are no longer a slave to how you feel. You are free because you are in control. And in the end, everything comes down to one brutal truth. The life you live is a reflection of what you tolerate inside yourself. If you tolerate excuses, you get weakness. If you tolerate comfort, you get mediocrity. If you tolerate emotional reactions over disciplined action, you get chaos. No one is coming to save you from that. Freedom is not gifted. It is built decision by decision, habit by habit, day by day. Every time you choose discipline when it hurts, you reclaim control. Every time you act despite fear, you strengthen your identity. Every time you refuse to let emotions decide your behavior, you sharpen your edge. This is not about being perfect, it's about being accountable. You will feel tired. You will feel unmotivated. You will feel doubt. That is normal. What is not normal is allowing those feelings to dictate your future. Emotions are temporary, but the consequences of your actions are permanent. The disciplined person understands this and uses it as fuel. They don't wait to feel ready. They move and become ready through action. Over time, that action builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence builds freedom. The world respects those who can control themselves because self-control is rare. When you master discipline, you become dangerous in the best way. You can be trusted under pressure. You can endure when others collapse. You can build when others complain. And that is where the real lesson lies. Discipline is not about restriction. It is about liberation. It liberates you from excuses, from regret, from emotional instability, and from a life that feels out of your control. If you want freedom, stop chasing feelings and start enforcing standards. Control yourself, and nothing else will ever truly control you again.